Beneath the war-torn streets of Berlin, in a laboratory shrouded in secrecy, a group of scientists gathered around an apparatus that defied the laws of time. The room buzzed with nervous energy, lit only by the eerie glow of the machine at its center. At the helm stood Dr. Friedrich Weber, his hands steady despite the weight of the moment. "Is the temporal coordinate set?" Weber asked, his voice echoing in the underground chamber. "Yes, doctor," replied his assistant, a young man with wide, fearful eyes. "The 13th century, the Mongol Empire." Weber nodded, turning his attention back to the machine. It was the culmination of years of clandestine research funded by the highest ranks of the Nazi regime. A device capable of reaching back through the corridors of time to pluck out individuals from history itself. And their first subject was chosen for his legendary prowess in war, Genghis Khan. The scientists held their breath as Weber initiated the sequence. The machine hummed, a sound growing in intensity, filling the room with a palpable sense of the unknown. Then, with a flash of blinding light and a crackle of energy that rippled through the air, the impossible happened. In the center of the machine, where moments ago there had been nothing but empty space, now stood a figure. Clad in ancient Mongolian armor, his eyes fierce and unyielding, Genghis Khan had arrived in the 20th century. For a moment, there was complete silence. The great Khan, disoriented, looked around with a mixture of confusion and awe. His gaze fell upon the array of strange equipment, the unfamiliar faces cloaked in shadows, and the bizarre architecture of his surroundings. "Weber, what have you done?" whispered one of the scientists, his voice a mix of fear and wonder. Dr. Weber stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the legendary figure before him. "Welcome, Genghis Khan, to 1941. Welcome to the heart of the Third Reich." Khan's confusion slowly morphed into understanding, a sly grin forming on his lips as he began to grasp the potential of this new world. A world at war, ripe for conquest by a ruler who had once commanded the largest empire known to man. "Where am I?" Khan's voice, though uncertain in this alien environment, carried the unmistakable tone of authority and power. "You are in Berlin, Germany," Weber replied, maintaining a respectful distance. "You have been brought here to help us change the course of history." As the realization dawned on Khan, the scientists exchanged nervous glances. They had unleashed a force they barely understood, a force that had once reshaped the world. What consequences would this act of temporal audacity bring? Only time would tell. In the dimly lit confines of the laboratory, Genghis Khan stood like a relic of a bygone era, his gaze piercing through the gathered scientists. The air was thick with a mixture of fear and fascination. Dr. Weber, maintaining a composed facade, gestured towards the exit. "Let us find a more suitable place to talk," he suggested, aware of the discomforting effect the enclosed space had on their guest. As they moved through the labyrinthine corridors of the secret facility, Khan observed everything with keen interest. The stark, utilitarian architecture of the bunker was a far cry from the sprawling steppes of Mongolia. The humming machinery and glowing lights were like nothing he had ever seen, yet his adaptability, a trait that had served him well in his conquests, kept his unease in check. They entered a spacious room, more akin to a war room than a laboratory, with a large table at its center. Maps and charts were spread across it, depicting a world unfamiliar to Khan. Dr. Weber began to explain the geopolitical landscape of 1941, pointing out territories, borders, and the positions of enemy forces. Khan listened, his mind racing to grasp the complexities of this new world. The concepts of nation-states, mechanized warfare, and the sheer scale of the conflict were overwhelming, yet intriguing. He was a quick learner, his mind sharpening as he began to see the parallels between his time and this one. "You seek to expand your empire, to conquer your enemies," Khan stated, his voice steady. "You wish to use my knowledge of war to achieve this." Weber nodded, impressed by Khan's perceptiveness. Yes, your expertise in strategy and tactics could be invaluable to us. The world has changed, but the art of war, that remains constant. Khan walked around the table, his fingers tracing the borders on the maps. Tell me of your enemies. Who stands against you? We are at war with the Allied powers, primarily Britain and the United States, Weber explained, detailing the strengths and weaknesses of each. As the conversation progressed, the other scientists observed in silence. They were witnessing a historical figure, renowned for his military genius, being briefed on a war that spanned continents. The potential for this alliance was enormous, yet so were the risks. Khan, now with a rudimentary understanding of the global conflict, turned to Weber. You have brought me to your time, a time of war. What is it that you desire from me? We need your insight, Khan, Weber replied earnestly. Your ability to outmaneuver enemies, to strike fear into the hearts of those who oppose you. With your help, we can turn the tide of this war in our favor. A faint smile appeared on Khan's lips. The prospect of engaging in a new form of warfare, of testing his legendary skills against modern armies, ignited a familiar fire within him. He was a conqueror at heart, and this was a challenge he could not resist. Very well, Khan agreed, his decision made. I will aid you in your conquest. But remember this, I am Genghis Khan, and I bow to no one. The room fell silent, the gravity of his words hanging in the air. The scientists had resurrected a force of nature, and now they had to contend with the storm they had unleashed. The strategy session convened in a grand hall, its walls echoing with the whispers of apprehensive military officers and Nazi officials. They were gathered to hear the insights of Genghis Khan, an addition to their ranks that was as astonishing as it was unsettling. At the head of the table sat Khan, his presence commanding attention despite his unfamiliarity with the surroundings. General Erich von Manstein, one of the Wehrmacht's most respected strategists, opened the discussion. He laid out the current state of the war, detailing the challenges they faced on the Eastern Front and the ongoing conflict with the British and Americans. Khan listened, his eyes narrowing as he absorbed every detail. When von Manstein finished, there was a pause, the room holding its breath, waiting for the Mongol leader's response. Your tactics, Khan began, his voice resonating with authority, rely heavily on machines of war. Tanks, airplanes, these are tools unknown to me. But the essence of war does not change. It is about the will to conquer, to exploit the weaknesses of your enemy. He leaned forward, his gaze sweeping across the room. You speak of supply lines, of logistics. In my time, we moved swiftly, striking where least expected. Mobility, surprise, these were our strengths. Von Manstein exchanged glances with his colleagues. Khan's perspective was unorthodox, yet there was a simplicity in his approach that appealed to the military minds present. We have tried to be unpredictable, von Manstein replied, but perhaps not with the boldness you suggest. Khan nodded. Show me your maps. Where you are stalled, where the enemy is strongest. I will tell you where to strike. As the maps were laid out, Khan's finger traced paths across them, proposing daring maneuvers and surprise attacks that went against conventional military thinking. His suggestions were met with a mixture of skepticism and fascination. Your ideas are unconventional, Weber interjected, cautious. But they could offer us an advantage. We will consider them closely. The session adjourned with much to ponder. Khan's strategies, rooted in a bygone era, had ignited a new spark of possibility in the war room. Later that day, Khan was taken to a military base to witness the might of the German army. As he observed tanks rolling across the field and planes soaring in the sky, his expression was inscrutable. He was a warrior from a different age, now standing amidst the pinnacle of modern warfare. These machines, Khan mused aloud, they change the nature of war, but not its heart. The heart is in the warrior, in his courage and cunning. General von Manstein, accompanying him, could not help but admire Khan's adaptability. You understand quickly, Khan. Would you like to see more of our capabilities? Khan nodded, his mind already weaving strategies that would fuse his ancient tactics with this new age of warfare. As they moved from one display to another, the general realized the enormity of what they had unleashed. Genghis Khan, a master of war, was now part of their arsenal, a wild card in a game that was rapidly changing. Genghis Khan's immersion into the world of modern warfare continued as he was escorted through a vast military complex, a testament to the technological advancements of the 20th century. Tanks rumbled past, their steel armor glinting in the sunlight, while overhead, fighter planes roared, leaving trails in the sky. Khan, observing these machines of war, reflected on the vast difference between his horse-mounted warriors and these mechanical beasts. Yet his keen mind began to see not just differences, but opportunities. General von Manstein, noticing Khan's interest, gestured towards a panzer tank. This is the Panzer IV, one of our most effective armored vehicles. Khan approached the tank, laying his hand on the cold metal. In my time, we relied on the speed and endurance of our horses. These machines, he said, tapping the tank, they are your war horses. Yes, von Manstein replied, and they require a different kind of strategy, one that perhaps could benefit from your insight. The day unfolded with Khan being shown the array of weaponry, from infantry rifles to the formidable artillery. Each demonstration brought a thoughtful look to Khan's face as he contemplated how his tactics of mobility and surprise could be adapted to this new form of warfare. As evening approached, Khan and the German military leaders gathered to plan a joint operation. The target was a critical Allied supply route, heavily guarded and considered a challenging objective. We have attempted to breach their defenses before, without success, von Manstein explained, pointing to the maps. Your approach, Khan, could be what we need to break through. Khan studied the maps, his finger tracing possible attack routes. A direct assault will be expected. But if we use a feint, draw their attention elsewhere, we can strike where they are weakest. The room buzzed with discussion as they considered Khan's proposal. Some officers were skeptical, but others saw the potential in such a bold strategy. The plan was taking shape, a blend of Khan's ancient tactics and the German army's modern capabilities. However, as the planning progressed, ideological differences began to surface. Khan's focus was on victory, on the glory of conquest, while the Nazi leaders had broader, more sinister goals. This tension simmered beneath the surface, an undercurrent that threatened to disrupt their uneasy alliance. Victory is achieved not just on the battlefield, but in the hearts and minds of the people, Khan remarked, sensing the deeper motives of his allies. Weber, cautious, replied, "Our objectives align, Khan. For now, let us focus on the task at hand." The meeting ended with a plan in place, but the underlying ideological differences remained unresolved. Khan, a conqueror from a distant past, found himself in the midst of a conflict that was not only about territory, but also about the very ideals that shaped the world. As Khan retired for the night, he pondered the path he had embarked upon. He had always been a master of his destiny, but in this new world, with its new rules, he wondered if he was a player or a pawn. The dawn of the operation day broke with a tense air over the German military base. Genghis Khan, clad in a blend of his traditional armor and modern military gear, stood overlooking the troops. The plan was set, a pincer movement, with a feint attack drawing the enemy out, followed by a swift, crushing blow to their flank. As the operation commenced, Khan's strategies began to unfold on the battlefield. The initial feint attack, executed with a smaller force, successfully drew the Allied troops' attention. Then, with precise timing, the main German force, guided by Khan's tactics, struck hard at the exposed flank. The surprise and speed of the attack were reminiscent of Khan's historical battles, and for a moment, it seemed as if time itself had blurred, fusing the ancient with the modern. Tanks moved with surprising agility, echoing the maneuvers of the Mongol cavalry, and the ground forces advanced with a ferocity that Khan inspired. The operation was a success. The Allied supply line was cut, causing significant disruption. As the dust settled, Khan surveyed the aftermath. The victory was clear, but so was the cost. The battlefield was strewn with destruction, a stark reminder of the deadly efficiency of modern warfare. In the midst of this, the ideological differences between Khan and the Nazi leaders came to a head. Khan had fought for conquest and glory, but the Nazis' vision extended beyond mere territorial gains. Their goals were rooted in a dark ideology that Khan neither shared nor understood fully. As he confronted Weber and the other leaders, the tension was palpable. "I am a warrior," Khan declared, his voice resolute. "I fight for the thrill of conquest, for the honor of victory. But what you seek, this goes beyond the warrior's code." Weber, unflinching, responded, "Our goals are for the greater good of our people, for a future that we are destined to forge." Khan, his eyes cold, retorted, "I see now the path you tread, and it is one I cannot follow. I am Genghis Khan, and I bow to no one, especially not to those who lose sight of honor in pursuit of their ambition." With that, Khan made a decision that would alter the course of his involvement in this war. Rejecting the Nazi ideology, he chose to withdraw his support, a move that shocked the German command. Khan, a figure out of time, had seen the future they envisioned, and he refused to be a part of it. As Khan walked away, the future of the alliance in tatters, he realized the complexity of this new world. It was a place where the lines of battle were not just drawn on the fields, but also in the hearts and minds of people. He had played his part in this chapter of history, but now he chose to step away, his legend untouched by the ambitions of those whose honor had been lost in the shadows of war. As the news of Genghis Khan's withdrawal spread through the ranks of the German command, reactions varied from incredulity to outright anger. The operation's success had given them a taste of victory, a glimpse of what could have been achieved with Khan's military genius at their disposal. But now, they faced the harsh reality of his departure, a strategic and psychological blow to their plans. Meanwhile, word of Khan's involvement and subsequent rejection of the Nazi cause reached the Allied forces, stirring a mix of astonishment and relief. The presence of a historical figure of Khan's stature had been a wild card, unpredictable and potentially devastating. His decision to step back was seen as a fortunate, if bewildering, turn of events. In the days that followed, Khan found himself a man out of time and place. His brief foray into modern warfare had given him insights into a world vastly different from his own, both in terms of technological advancement and the complex moral landscapes it entailed. Khan, once a ruler of an empire that stretched across continents, now wandered through the war-torn European countryside, reflecting on his experiences. The power of modern weaponry and the scale of destruction it wrought had left a deep impression on him. He pondered over the relentless pursuit of power and the ideologies that drove men to such lengths of cruelty. As he traveled, Khan's thoughts turned to his own legacy. He had been a conqueror, a warrior king who had carved his name in history with the might of his sword and the strength of his will. Yet, in this brief intersection with the future, he had seen a world that challenged his understanding of power and conquest. In a small, secluded village, Khan encountered a group of locals who, unaware of his identity, shared tales of the war and their hopes for peace. In their stories, Khan saw the resilience of the human spirit, the enduring desire for a life free from the shadow of tyranny. This encounter inspired Khan to pen his reflections. Using a mixture of his native language and the bits of German and English he had picked up, he wrote about his journey through time, his role in the war, and his realization that true power lay not in the conquest of lands, but in the strength of one's character and the respect earned from others. Khan's writings, though initially obscure, would eventually be discovered and translated, offering a unique perspective on a historical figure caught in the whirlwind of a future war. His insights into leadership, honor, and the human condition would resonate across time, adding a new layer to the legend of Genghis Khan. As he finally departed from the European continent, embarking on a journey to an unknown destination, Khan carried with him the lessons of this extraordinary experience. His legacy, already cemented in the annals of history, had now been enriched by a brief, yet profound, encounter with a future he could never have imagined. In the end, Genghis Khan, a man of the 13th century, had touched the 20th century in a way that echoed into the annals of history, leaving a legacy that transcended time and changed the narrative of his life forever. 5 years later, the rolling hills of a quiet countryside, far removed from the scars of war, basked in the gentle embrace of the morning sun. Here, amidst the serene beauty of nature, Genghis Khan had found an unexpected refuge. The once fearsome conqueror now lived the life of a farmer, his days marked by the simple rhythms of tending to the land and livestock. In these peaceful years, Khan had discovered a contentment he had never known in his previous life of endless conquests. His hands, once accustomed to the grip of a sword, now skillfully maneuvered plow and scythe. The fields he cultivated were his new empire, one that yielded harvests, not from subjugation, but from care and toil. As he walked through his fields, Khan realized the profound truth of his new existence. He had no enemies here, no battles to wage, no lands to conquer. The tranquility of this life brought him a sense of fulfillment that conquest never had. In the chorus of rustling leaves and the whispering winds, he found a peace that the clamor of battlefields had never afforded him. Later that day, Khan decided to visit the nearby village, a quaint settlement where he had become a familiar, if mysterious, figure. The villagers knew little of his past, only that he was a solitary man of few words, yet kind and respectful. As he strolled through the village, his gaze was drawn to an art and antique store, its windows displaying an array of relics from the past. Curiosity piqued, Khan stepped inside, the bell above the door announcing his arrival. The store was a treasure trove of history, each item telling its own story. Khan's eyes scanned the artifacts of eras long gone, until they rested on a particular object that sent a shiver down his spine, a German World War II uniform, meticulously preserved and displayed with reverence. He stood there, staring at the uniform, memories of his brief, tumultuous foray into the war flooding back. It seemed like another lifetime, a surreal chapter in his long and storied existence. But it was the painting next to the uniform that truly captured his attention. It was a portrait, skillfully rendered, of a face he knew all too well, his own. The artist had captured the essence of Genghis Khan, the warrior out of time, his gaze intense yet tinged with an unspoken melancholy. Khan felt a surge of emotions as he looked at the painting. It was a mirror to his soul, a reminder of his journey through time, of the wars he had fought, both on the battlefields and within himself. As he stood there, lost in thought, the store owner approached, a hint of recognition in his eyes. "An extraordinary piece, isn't it?" the owner remarked, gesturing to the painting. "They say the man in that portrait changed the course of history in ways we can barely comprehend." Khan merely nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips, his eyes still fixed on the portrait. He turned to leave, the bell chiming again as he exited into the fading light of the day. The mystery of Genghis Khan, the farmer who had once been a conqueror, remained intact. As he walked back to his farm, the setting sun cast long shadows on the path, shadows that whispered of a past filled with glory and turmoil and a present steeped in quiet redemption. In the tranquility of his new life, Khan had found a different kind of conquest, one of inner peace and reconciliation with the world. And as the stars began to twinkle in the evening sky, he knew that this was the journey he had been destined to make all along.